Today I'm making one of my favorite dishes. This is a Thai-inspired ground beef bowl, and it often is served with rice and also some sort of vegetables. Now, you don't have to use ground beef, and that's kind of what I'm showing today. Instead of using ground beef, I'm going to be using ground turkey, and we're gonna experiment with a couple different ways to keep it from drying out. So hopefully one of those ways works. The reason I am doing this today is that somebody commented on this Thai-inspired ground beef bowl that they made it with ground turkey and it was really dry. Now, nobody wants really dry meat for dinner. That's not gonna help you be excited to cook for one or to cook at all. So I wanna show a couple of options and hopefully one of those are gonna work like I mentioned. Now, this recipe does have a sauce and that's gonna help. So in addition to kind of experimenting with this particular question or problem that somebody had, I also wanted to share to kind of show how to go about problem solving while you're cooking. So then you're more likely to have a dish that turns out more edible or delicious as opposed to something that you feel the need or the obligation to eat and it's just a miserable, horrible experience. We don't want that. That's not gonna help cooking for one. It's not gonna help anything, and I kind of relate to that and not wanting to waste food and feeling obligated to eat food that is not good, and it's not an enjoyable experience, especially when you've paid for the ingredients and spent the time and then having to come up with plan B after it's all been cooked. No, let's talk about and figure out ways to make what you made work or problem solve as you're cooking. I'm Rebecca, I'm a non-diet dietitian and cooking for one expert, and I'm just here to help you make cooking for one enjoyable and to make it something that you can look forward to and do for yourself and it not to be horrible or miserable or not feel worth it or take up way too much time. Just before we get started in cooking, I wanted to share a little bit about this recipe. I love this recipe. It's one of the recipes that I go to when I want to throw something together that doesn't take a ton of effort and it's quite easy. This is it. It's like 3 ingredients in a sauce. You just throw them together. You brown up some sort of meat, or I've been using TVP, which is textured vegetable protein. It's a soy-based product and it is like insanely cheap, super easy, and with sauces that have a lot of flavor, it's great. I really like it. Okay, finally, let's get started. Since I'm serving mine with rice, my first step is to get the rice going. I cook my rice in an Instant Pot. It's so easy and quick. Just gonna click rice. I'm making white rice and it just takes 12 minutes of cooking in the Instant Pot, but that also takes time for the pressure. So I just started the rice, and what I like to do is cook extra servings so then I can keep it in the fridge for later or freeze it. And my method of freezing is to lay it out in a small layer, it can't be one layer, in a small layer on a sheet pan with a mat or like a baking mat or something under it, and then freeze it for an hour or so and then transfer to a bag. Now, refrigerated and frozen rice does lose a lot of its moisture. And so when I'm reheating it, I usually reheat it in the bag that it's in, unless I'm just need like less than what's in the bag. I'll add water to that and that's gonna help the texture be a lot better. So that's what I highly recommend. So that's gonna cook in the Instant Pot on its own. Instant Pots are fantastic because they can act like a rice maker and cook just as great or almost as good rice as a rice maker, but you can also use it for other things. While my pans are heating, I'm gonna throw together my sauce. So I've got about 1.5 tablespoons of oyster sauce. This oyster sauce is kind of the last of its, we'll see how easily this gets out, but it's got a really savory, sweet, thick sauce. And it doesn't really taste like oysters. There we go. I'm adding, again, about 1.5 tablespoons. And next I'm gonna be adding about the same of fish sauce. I just kind of want to use the rest of this. I've got a better kind that I like that I'd rather use instead. And I'll use this to stir it all up. And then finally, 2 teaspoons of sugar just to sweeten it up. Now it looks like my pans are hot. I'm gonna stir this up and get going. I'm preparing the turkey 2 ways. So I have 2 pans here. They're different sizes. It's gonna be fine. I'm just gonna spray both of them because I feel like I can't quite cook without spraying them, and these are heated up a little bit too long. Oh, and I'm also, this is not gonna work. I'm gonna let this pan cool off, and I'm adding my vegetables to this guy. That's okay if it's a little brown. I'm adding garlic to the other one, and I really don't want to burn the garlic. Burnt garlic is real not tasty. So I'm cooking these separately because I have the 2 pans, might as well. I would normally cook the garlic first, and you just, the garlic is thin sliced, and you cook it in oil and it gets nice and crispy. It's so good on this. It's a nice little addition, and it doesn't take as long to mince as it does to mince, excuse me. It doesn't take as long as it does to mince, and that's nice. So I'm gonna kind of cook my vegetables, turn up the heat a little bit, and add some water to them to kind of steam. Now the nice thing about cooking, for one, you can just use your water bottle to add water to something, and water is a great ingredient to use when you're cooking, and it's great to help control temperature and prevent foods from browning. Now you wouldn't want to use it in absolutely everything, but it's great in this option. So I'm just gonna get rid of this. More water. I just cooked out I just removed the burnt oil spray. And since these things take a few minutes, this is a great opportunity to do a little other work. So you needed to cut something or prepare something for later, this is a great way to use up your time more wisely. So I'm adding some oil. It kind of, like, if you feel like you added a little bit too much for the garlic, that's okay, because you're gonna cook the meat in here afterward, and especially using turkey, oil is a really helpful tool. Okay, it's not quite hot enough, so I'm gonna turn up the heat and wait just a moment to add my garlic. I wanna fry it quickly, and so I want it to be nice and hot. Now these vegetables are brightening up, they're beautiful. I'm just gonna cook them a little bit longer. They don't have any seasoning or anything on them. I'm gonna add them back with the sauce, so no need to season these because the sauce has lots of flavor. Okay, I can hear my oil popping a little bit, so that means it is time or after time. I thinly sliced like 5 or something garlic cloves. They're kind of small, but this garlic is so good. As much as you want or can have is great. Again, I'm just gonna cook these until they brown and then remove them and keep the oil in here. Okay, as you can see, the garlic is getting real nice and brown, so I'm going to remove it. I don't want it to burn, which it's getting pretty close. I'm just putting it back on the cutting board that I was storing it on. And there is still some oil in here, which is great. And the vegetables also, the water has been evaporated and absorbed. And these are looking great. They're not browned or anything. You can cook them longer to brown them, but I'm hungry, so I'm just transferring them over to my cutting board. I'm a lazy cook. I want everything to be as easy as possible. So with that said, I'm just grabbing some frozen ground turkey. The amounts aren't exactly equal, but it'll be fine. Okay, the door is open, it's smoking. It's because the water and the oil in this are not happy. And I should have sprayed this already. So when I'm cooking meat from frozen, it is gonna take a little bit longer, but I'll just continually work at it to kind of get the top parts off, so then it'll cook a little bit more evenly. And you don't have to do this. It's kind of like the saving money and time, well, not really time in this moment, but this is kind of an easier, less expensive option if you can find it on sale or something. I'm also going to do the same thing with the oil. Again, be a little bit more careful because the oil is spitting everywhere. It's because this is frozen. But just give yourself a little space. Just be careful. And you can even just kind of let it sit a little bit longer. Well, try to keep the brown bits facing up. And just continue cooking it. The frozen is a little bit harder to maneuver for a bit. And I might turn this down just a little bit because it is getting burnt on this side. And as I mentioned, this is the water test. So we'll see if adding this water helps keep the turkey brown. And another reason I kind of thought of trying it frozen is that it could get even more dried out from frozen. So if this works well to maintain moisture, that's a good sign. And I can just continue to add water as it evaporates, maybe give it a little time. This is not scientific, even though it's kind of an experiment. Just kind of playing with it and see how it goes. All right, hope the leaf blower outside isn't too loud. But I wanted to mention too, so you can see that this is cooking down, and I've been able to, as I've been scraping off the top and the bottom and flipping the meat, it only took a couple minutes. It really wasn't that long. When I freeze meat, I try to keep it kind of like in a thinner piece, so then it's gonna cook more quickly. And looking at these two, you know, the oil is really helpful for this meat because it kind of is a buffer for the heat. It's cooking more evenly, and it's like not burnt at all. The browning is really nice, and this got kind of burnt even with the water. But it's not it's looking to be pretty tender, which is good. Another thing too, you could use like one of those mallet things that smashes the meat, but I like using a spoon that has kind of a tip to break apart the meat. Will it work as well? Not really, but it's a multi-purpose utensil at this point, which is great. So just the last couple minutes of cooking these two together or separately. Again, if I were making just one serve, or if I was just making one, not two options, I would just cook it all together. Would add the vegetables here too, but I don't want to add in other ingredients to kind of see what's going to work better for maintaining keeping ground turkey moist. People don't like that word. For keeping the ground turkey less dry. I'm also going to add the sauce here in a moment. Again, this sauce has fish sauce, oyster sauce, and sugar. Fish sauce, if you're not super familiar with it, is amazing. It has a very strong scent, but when you cook with it, you add it to food, it mellows out, and it just adds a real nice saltiness, a depth of flavor, some umami flavors, which is really nice to add some depth of flavor to whatever you're cooking. It's delicious. So I'm going to add a little bit more to here than to this because there's a little bit more meat in here, but I'm gonna divide them evenly and we'll see how they do. If you don't necessarily have these ingredients on hand all the time, that's okay. If you really like Thai food, Vietnamese food, for example, and like to make it for yourself, I would encourage you to try these ingredients. They can be found at grocery stores and also definitely at Asian supermarkets. And they're so delicious. The fish sauce in particular can be added to sauces and marinades, and can be added to like soups and stews if you need to add some depth of flavor. You add just a tiny little bit and you can't really tell that there's fish sauce in it. And it's not super fishy either. I'm not a funky fish fermented fish flavors fan, but fish sauce is awesome. So I'm gonna turn both these off, and I'm adding the vegetables back in. I made kind of a lot, but I'm in the mood for vegetables. I haven't been eating as many lately and would like some more. So add as much as you want, but I'm adding this too here so then they can kind of take on the sauce. Also gonna use this to get more of the sauce out. You know, with all these vegetables, it might be good to add some extra sauce. This is not saucy at all. If you like it saucy, then I would definitely I would double the sauce recipe. And another thing too, this makes 2 servings. I didn't say that before, but this makes 2 servings and is really great as leftovers. It's really good. The flavors are gonna meld together more and it's gonna be delicious. So back to the oyster sauce and fish sauce. Hot Thai Kitchen is a great website or blog with Thai recipes, and she's got some information on both of those sauces, so I'll link those in the description. Okay, so before we get into taste testing, I wanted to share a couple of more options for substitutions, because again, the whole point of this is not following the recipe. What are ways that you can adapt recipes online to use what you have and to also now to problem solve as you're cooking, so then you can have something that's delicious and edible at the end. So first, let's talk about proteins. I talked about that earlier, but I'll bring it up again. Ground beef is what's in the recipe. You don't have to use ground beef. You can use ground turkey. We'll see the best way to prepare that to keep it with lots of moisture and tasting good. Also ground chicken, ground pork, and then you could go with a plant-based option as well. You could do some sort of like a plant-based burger substitute, as long as it's trying to taste like beef as opposed to like some other flavors, because you want to have the sauce be the flavor and not necessarily the meat itself as much. You could also do TVP, which is what I used. I'll grab some actually. I've made this dish with TVP, which is a soy-based protein. I've made this multiple times, and this plus like a bigger so this plus a bigger jar was like $3 at Winco, which is my favorite grocery store. And I mean, that is so inexpensive. All you do is proportion out what you want, add water or add hot water, and then it's gonna absorb up the liquid, and then you can use it as you would otherwise. Of course, it's not as flavorful as these meats are, but I mean, for like 5 cents maybe for a serving, that's a great price. And this sauce is so flavorful. Okay, so those are options for the protein. The vegetable, if you wanted to add one, literally anything, do so many things. The fried garlic on top is fantastic. I would keep it as it is, but you can also substitute just for minced or skip that if you want to. It adds nice texture, flavor, crunch texture. It's kind of the same thing. It's fantastic. And then I really like it over rice. Rice is super easy. It's easy to make and store some, or to buy where it's like the quick cooking rice, or buy it frozen. I mean, the options are endless, but you could do like a rice noodle. You could serve it over, you could even like have it as a wrap maybe too. I mean, the options are endless. Whatever you prefer, whatever you want to use up that you have, awesome. So that's kind of the basics when it comes to substitutions for this recipe. I wouldn't make substitutions for the sauce because it is very unique and very specific. I would continue to add the sugar, or definitely add the sugar, as it's gonna mellow out and kind of like sweeten up the sauce in itself, but that's kind of about it. If you're not interested in getting those sauces to add to make the sauce, then maybe this is a great recipe or a great dish that you can have at your favorite Thai restaurant, and great supporting local restaurants, and just do something else. There are so many recipes out there, so many options. Okay, I am very hungry. Oh, I'm only an hour later than I wanted to be. That's not too bad. So let's taste test them and see how they turn out. Okay, so I've got some rice, and I'm going to be dishing up. So this is messy. Tried to do kind of smaller amounts here. That one was cooked with oil. And this was cooked with water. Now, the water one got a little bit burnt on accident, but it's kind of nice because they look different and it's easy to tell what's what. Again, I can use my fingers because when you're cooking for one, it's you eating it. Okay, so I've got the finished 2 dishes here, and I forgot the garlic. Garlic that I made especially while cooking the vegetables. Again, the garlic you'd want to cook separately, but the vegetables you can add to the ground, whatever it is that you're cooking, and use that. So I'm gonna start with the water one. I'm using a spoon because hopefully it'll stay together more. The flavor is awesome. It's not dry at all. Water works just well. Okay, so water works. Again, keeping some moisture in there is really helpful. The water is a great option. The oil, I mean the flavor, the added oil is helping enhance the flavor of the sauce. So you can get that from ground beef, but if you're cooking with some sort of a protein that's leaner, in particular that TVP, there's like no fat in that, and so you're gonna need to add fat to it. But I would make the oil one. Like no question, it's delicious. It cooked more evenly and was easier. There was a little bit more forgiveness when it came to the temperature of the stove. I'm still trying to figure out my stove. It's confusing to me every week. Both are delicious, neither are dry, but this oil is so good. Well, thanks so much for watching. I hope that was helpful to kind of see how to problem solve while you're cooking. If you are cooking for one, using your water bottle is a great way to keep whatever it is that you're cooking, to prevent burning a little bit, and then also to add in moisture. And especially if you're cooking with an ingredient that has low fat, you want to add something to it. So that's fantastic. This is delicious. Again, it still is one of my favorite recipes. It's got so much flavor, it's so easy, and like, I mean, vegetables and some sort of meat and rice. I don't think life gets any better than that. It's delicious. Thanks so much for watching. I hope this was helpful. I hope it was helpful to kind of see the process and see that cooking requires, and also part of cooking is to just work with what you've got on the fly and make adaptations and substitutions as you need to. And hopefully these tips will help save some more of your dishes so then you're able to eat them and hopefully enjoy them. Subscribe for more content like this. I'd love to see any comments or any feedback that you have. What's your favorite Thai food? I'm curious whether you're making it yourself or you're ordering it at your favorite restaurant, what are your favorite dishes? I'm also curious what you do to combat that drying out of ground turkey or other lean meats. Do you do water or oil? I've also seen adding onions to it. That would work for this recipe too. I should have mentioned that earlier. I totally forgot. Onions or something like that is great. I thought about buying an onion, but I didn't add it to my list, I guess, and so I don't have any. So this is what I'm working with. Like this video, all of those things. I hope this is helpful. I'm sure it's gonna be helpful for somebody. You just gotta get in front of those people. So like, comment, subscribe, you know the whole spiel. And thanks for watching.